1045, the team, your home for New York sports, and now brought to you by Mohawk, Army, Navy. Field Yates, Field, a lot of people very curious what's going on with Big Blue. Anything you're hearing right now about the New York Giants?
Well, I think that we've gotten incrementally closer, but I don't think that anything is done by any stretch. I'm not sure there's a favorite in this race. I have heard, obviously, a lot of buzz about the possibility of Matt Patricia being the guy that the New York Giants ultimately choose. He, of course, is currently the Patriots' defensive coordinator, but I don't think that it's necessarily a slam dunk that he is the next New York Giants head coach. I do believe that Steve Wilks is very much in the race. He, of course, is the Carolina Panthers defensive coordinator. I think Josh McDaniels should not be counted out as well. I think until some of the top candidates, which are the Patriots coordinators and also Pat Shurmur, are eliminated from the playoffs, which is the earliest, or if they win the Super Bowl, of course, the earliest that they could take a job, that's sort of like the next domino to fall into place.
Would the Patriots, let's say somehow a monumental upset happens this weekend, would being available early help Patricia or McDaniels?
I don't know about that, because I think that when teams target a coach and really want that coach, they're willing to wait no matter what it takes. And, as we know, guys, as much as these deals cannot be formalized until a coach has his season expire, let's not be naive, right? I mean, you think Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers didn't understand they were going to become dancing partners last year as he went all the way to the Super Bowl? Right? I mean, everybody knew that deal was going to get done. It's not like the 49ers were just dragging their feet during the process. So if McDaniels or Patricia has a good beat on where he will be the next head coach, if that's what he wants to do, I think you can safely say that that team is willing to wait for him no matter how long it takes.
So with that being said, there's almost no question that Matt Patricia will be a head coach, whether it's in New York, Detroit, or somewhere else?
No, I don't know that I'd say that either. I mean, listen, anything could happen. My working assumption right now is that both Matt Patricia and Josh McDaniels will no longer be with the Patriots next season.
Okay.
That being said, a lot of things can change. I think as of Thursday, January 11th, the four most likely head coaches amongst the four vacancies are Pat Shurmur, Josh McDaniels, Matt Patricia, and Steve Wilks. It's just a matter of fitting those coaches in to the respective jobs available.
Field Yates with us right now on 1045, the team brought to you by Mohawk, Army, Navy. Let's talk about on the field. I say a monumental upset. Is there any scenario you can see in which the Titans could pull off the victory over the Pats?
Yeah, I always say that nothing should be considered a certainty in the NFL and the playoffs, right? Because that's just sort of fool's gold. I mean, things can change so dramatically. The Patriots are a decided favorite. They have a personnel edge, right? They're probably the more talented team. I think, and there are times when nuanced analysis is really good. A lot of times it's good. There are also times where stating the somewhat apparent is also good. And in this case, the latter applies. If the Titans are going to win Saturday night, they need to find a way to somewhat slow down Tom Brady. In the 5 games against top quarterbacks, or the best 5 quarterbacks the Titans faced this season, which I would contend in some order, Deshaun Watson, Russell Wilson, Ben Roethlisberger, Jimmy Garoppolo, and Jared Goff, they allowed an average of 324 passing yards, a total of 17 touchdowns, and they intercepted those 5 guys once.
Wow.
One combined time. So, again, we can sort of get to the X's and the O's, but at the end of the day, if they can't slow down Tom Brady, how do you put any faith in this team pulling an upset on the road?
The Patriots are the 1 seed in the AFC, but on the NFC side, the Eagles are the 1 seed, but somehow they're the underdog against the Atlanta Falcons. Should the Eagles be considered an underdog against Atlanta?
You know something? I think on principle alone, I almost don't buy into the idea, and I am one of the few that are picking the Philadelphia Eagles, and I think it's just a faith that this roster is better than just it's more than just the quarterback. I understand that Carson Wentz, still might be a top 3 finisher in the MVP race, and deservedly so. I also feel like that Philadelphia Eagles roster is being a bit overlooked right now, right? There were times where that defense was ferocious. There were times where that defense catalyzed wins for that team. And I understand that we have this recency impact. The Falcons played their best game of the season in the first round of the playoffs, and the Eagles kind of slowly finished up the regular season. That Nick Foles start in Week 17 of 4 drives and 0 points, and winning against Oakland in Week 16, a nail-biter that really was the defense's work to win that game 19-10. I understand why everybody is sort of miffed by those 2 games, or sort of confused as to why the Eagles should be a favorite. I tend to look at the full season-long sample. I think the Eagles are going to be ready to play this Saturday afternoon.
Field Yates with us right now, 104.5 The Team, brought to you by Mohawk Army Navy. Field, the Blake Bortles saga continues in Jacksonville. You have the unique perspective of, on-field evaluation and fantasy evaluation. What is he ever going to just click 100%, or should he enjoy this playoff run while it lasts?
Enjoy it while it lasts. I would say this, though. I still think Blake Bortles probably is going to be the quarterback for the Jaguars next year. I was having this conversation with Dave Jacoby on the Nickel Package podcast earlier this week that I think we need to abandon the idea of quarterback evaluations except for from year to year. Like, we can't do week-to-week quarterback evaluations anymore. And the reason I say that is this. Blake Bortles is a Jekyll and Hyde quarterback this year in so many ways, right? I mean, he's had some brilliant moments, and he's had some whatever the opposite of brilliant moments are this season. Less than 100 yards passing last week in a win against the Bills. So, yeah, they still won. But, clearly there are some physical traits he has, and clearly there are some physical traits that Blake Bortles has not yet achieved and may never achieve. So I think that at the end of the day, like, not every team's going to have a top 10 quarterback, right? 10 of them are. Mm-hmm. And the Jaguars are either going to find a way to build a good enough roster, which they have already done a lot of, to keep winning without a top 10 quarterback, or eventually Blake Bortles is going to replace with a player that we do believe has a higher ceiling week to week.
In the last playoff game, we have to note Saints-Vikings. The winner of this game, should they be considered the favorite to get all the way to the Super Bowl to represent the NFC?
Yeah, that far I'll go. I said earlier, I can't believe that Philadelphia is not considered a favorite against Atlanta, but I will go as far as to say that Minnesota and New Orleans feel like the two best teams in the NFC to me. I think there are some people that are going to say, yeah, that's sort of like the de facto NFC championship game, right? These two teams played all the way back in week 1, so 18 weeks later, they meet for the second time. How much of week 1 can you carry over to this game? Not much, especially because Alvin Kamara had not been Alvin Kamara. The Saints defense wasn't what it is now. But I would say this, that some of the basic principles of what helped Minnesota win that game all the way back in week 1 are important here, again, in week 19, I'd like to call it, of the NFL season. If Minnesota can find a way to neutralize that Saints running game, which it's an unbelievable defense, then I think I certainly like the Minnesota Vikings' chances. Conversely, they got to find a way to protect Case Keenum because they've dealt with some offensive line struggles of late, and specifically because of injuries. Nick Eason's on IR, Pat Elflein's been banged up, Riley Reif's been banged up, but I think there's a pretty good chance that the Vikings find a way to stabilize the offensive line and win this game on Sunday.
Fields, your former coworker officially introduced as the new head coach of the Oakland Raiders. I was in a spirited bar debate last night where the other gentleman told me that when you're away from the game as long as he has been, you probably can't be effective head coach. The game has changed. I said he watches the game, he coaches the game. You know the guy better than I do. Will Gruden be effective in Oakland?
Yeah, and the idea that the game has changed dramatically and that you can't be effective, that's the part that I've been struggling with because your friend's not the only person to believe that. At the end of the day, it's a block and tackle game. Still, always has been, always will be, right?
Right.
And I get it. There are some changes, like the amount of practice time available and the amount of full pad practicing, things like I get all that stuff, the nuances of it, legal contact, all those things. But it's not as if Gruden has gone to the Himalayas and out of sight from the NFL for the past 10 years. He's been traveling around team to team for years and years and years, that's what he's been doing as a Monday Night Football analyst. So I tend to think that Jon Gruden is about as adept in football as there could be for someone that's been out of the game as a head coach for, I believe, 9 years.
Do you have any favorite or theory on who will replace him in the booth?
That I don't know. And I was just thinking about that as you guys brought up Jon Gruden. I'd be very curious. I mean, listen, it's a coveted gig for obvious reasons. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's somebody that really moves the needle, right? I mean, that's a job that I can imagine almost anybody in the media would want for obvious reasons.
Has Matthew Berry begun his candidacy for it or no?
I don't. It's a good. I'll text him after this to confirm. Him and I have a good thing going. Who's going to do the podcast with me on Mondays? But I would. It's selfish of me to ask, but it's the truth.
Well, then you should leave for Monday Night Football. Then don't even worry about Matthew Berry. You take the job.
Oh, come on, no one wants that.
Field Yates, always humble and always full of information. We appreciate you, brother, and look forward to talking to you next week.
All right, guys, take care.